Welcome to On the Chain. This is Jeff here with co-host Chip. What is going on, Chip? What's going on, everybody out there in the crypto on the chain community? You guys are pretty amazing. Today, we are going to talk about, you know what, Chip? The rise of XRP and how the 2023 crypto bill, because there is a brand new bill that they're working on, potentially has potential to ignite the bull market expectations. Is this crypto bill going to be the impetus that puts the crypto market in the US at the highest levels we've ever seen in the history of crypto over the past 12 years? That is a good question. We're going to dissect this bill. There's some interesting Ripple news that we're going to talk about, some XRP news, and there is a bill that is fit, and you know it, for the 21st century. You ready to kick this thing off?
Well done. Let's go.
Welcome to On the Chain.
Hello, everybody. Drop in where you are coming from. What part of the world do you actually reside in? Drop it in there. We'll put it up there as we go through some of these stories. We got a lot to unpack, and just like always, we probably won't get to it all, but that's okay because we have tomorrow night too. We can always bring some of that. There isn't usually a lot of news that happens on the weekend per se, but we will get it up there and we'll make sure it happens. Oh my gosh. If I have to watch another video on social media of one of those, ice cream cone, yummy. I mean, it's just ridiculous. It's just too much, Jeff.
All right.
It is really too much. But I want to start off with this one. This is a good one. XRP poised for boom as Uphold CEO predicts major institutional interest. So this was an interesting story here.
It is.
We have the
Uphold
digital, So JP Terrett, we've had him on here. It's probably time to get him on here again. But we had him. He was gracious enough to come in. I say like a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. But let's all remember that Uphold did not bend the knee when things went down because they said XRP was not a security. It was accused of being a security. There was a suit levied from the SEC to Ripple, but Uphold, out of everybody else, bent over and they bent the knee and they said, "Oh, we're going to delist it." And that didn't really do much for Coinbase or any of the others. Meanwhile, did you notice something interesting, Jeff? Uphold there was never any sort of blowback. Nothing from the SEC, nothing, right?
Uphold for the most part is offshore, but I don't believe they have a corporate office here as their primary.
I thought they had one in Virginia, though.
No, they might. Their primary corporate office. But yeah, they very well could have their regional office. But yeah, that was interesting. The other one that never really got any blowback was BitTrue. There were quite a few exchanges that kept. But they also kept trading the XRP. Eventually,
Eventually they did,
but Uphold did not.
Look at the international exchanges that they were not even based here. They're based over in Europe, based somewhere in Eastern Europe. They delisted it because they didn't want the SEC coming after them because they had some exposure to the US.
That was interesting when that started happening, and we started to see some of those exchanges. I wonder how they feel now. Don't they feel real small?
I feel stupid, Jeff. I feel stupid. All kinds of stupid. But nobody wants a lawsuit. And if you've ever been in business, and I certainly have been, and you have been, Jeff, and we get sued all the time. You're doing something right, you're making money, and you're going to get sued sometimes, right? People are going to come after you. Most of the time, you want to minimize that risk. But Terrett underlined the significance of the recent developments, and specifically the resolution of Ripple's high-profile legal case with the SEC, which declared XRP, Jeff, not as a security. And a lot of people are taking this really hard, especially the Bitcoin Maxis, especially the so-called brilliant minds out there, Jeff. They're having a real difficult time understanding exactly what happened here. And so with the lawsuit mostly behind them, Ripple and its native cryptocurrency XRP now set to experience major growth, capitalizing on the financial landscape. Uphold, which supported XRP throughout the legal dispute, sees this as an opportunity to expand its services and cater the growing demand for digital assets. And they're doing some other cool stuff in the space too, where they're going to allow you to keep your crypto off on a cold storage wallet with 3 keys. You keep 2, they keep 1, so that you can move it at any given time. They got another promotion coming out. They're doing cool stuff in the space. And I have to say, like, I really like the fact that they're leaders, they're not followers. They're creating stuff. They're not, in early days, we saw BitTrue do a lot of this stuff too. BitTrue recently came out with a 20% APR, which frightens me a little bit, only because, well, we know that Celsius, struggled with that. We know that they were having difficulties meeting the 16% and 12% APR. So you can lock it up. There's no lockup period, which is nice, but 20%, Jeff, seems pretty damn amazing. Almost.
Yeah, I've seen some of those gains, and so that it's a big number that they promise on some of these assets. I'm not sure. I still don't understand exactly how they're doing it specifically, because to get the gain, there has to be someone paying on the other end. But it is good. A lot of good things happening. A lot of great people from all over. You know what? I always look, and there's so many people that tune in from the UK, which is really cool. Scott from Ontario. So, Chip, lots of cool stuff.
Yeah, we got a lot of people tuning in. I love to see people from the UK.
Yeah. So what's next on the agenda here? This, what's going on over at Uphold? I'm excited about Uphold. One of the other things, that Uphold is doing, and actually, someone just brought that up, which is Crypto Bob is mentioning. Uphold's a fantastic platform. Crypto Bob's over in England, but Uphold's a fantastic platform. If you're new to digital assets, makes it easy, almost as easy as Coinbase. Looking forward to Uphold Volt when it gets released.
Vault, it's called. There's a typo right there. I think it's called Vault. Yeah,
Vault.
So the part
Uphold Vault, right?
I think that's what it's called. Yeah, Volt.
There it is, right there.
Is a Chevrolet car.
The Chevy Volt.
Chevy Volt.
Uphold
which is
has
an absolute
now
piece of garbage.
I think they ended it. I think
what he talks
Chevy
about
Volt no
is
longer exists.
It was pretty rough.
It was bad.
I had a colleague that had one, and it was always at the shop.
Really
bad.
It was a bad.
So what Terrett's really pushing to, he's saying traditional financial institutions in Europe and the UK in particular are showing interest in offering digital assets, many turning to Uphold for white label solutions. Mm-hmm. Nice to be able to, so there's a lot of interest that spells potential for XRP, already established a foothold in the cross-border payments, comparing the current climate of blockchain tech and cryptocurrency adoption to the dot-com boom. Terrett insists that, like the internet, blockchain tech will take time to reach mainstream adoption. And I think what they're doing over at Uphold, we always said this, that in order to have mass appeal, if you went to your bank and they say, okay, yeah, you got to do this, you got to move this, you got to set up a wallet, people are like, oh, that's so complicated. You go to the bank, you fill out your information, you get a bank account, that's it. Like when it becomes that easy, so you can see that Uphold is leading the way. He also highlighted the blockchain's utility in facilitating cost-effective, efficient cross-border transactions. Uphold's also working on additional projects, including a non-custodial fiat on and off ramp called Topher, and then collaborations with gaming companies to create a payments architecture for the conversion of digital in-game assets, and also to NFTs. And again, this right here, I think NFT market's going to explode in the next bull market. We're going to see like some massive growth. But this is it's exciting to see this, Jeff. I mean, it's really fantastic to see it.
Hey, so while that's happening, and Kelly Slade is bringing this up, mentioned NAB. NAB is what the National Australian Bank.
Yeah, I got that.
So you got that. So if you go right to their website, got the story. You can pull up the story.
Jumping ahead.
Yeah, only because it kind of relates. So here it's kind of the offset of Uphold, right? So Uphold doing good things, and then as a contra to that, right here we're in the crypto space, a lot of positives moving forward, and then so on the flip side, we have what's going on over with some of these banks, and here's the National Australian Bank. Chip, looks like it's completely overreaching to again protect, right? They want to protect consumers. So as they're protecting the consumer, they are deciding what you can and cannot do with your money. So not to say that they blocked the scam, but they blocked people from moving their money to specific exchanges in order to hopefully prevent potential scams for occurring against these individuals. And they stopped about $270 million in payments between March and July. So
yeah, I mean, we don't need that kind of. It sounds like the kind of protection the SEC is trying to provide, which is zero protection. We don't need your protection. We want freedom. We want to move it where we want. We don't need your help. Thank you. Go to another bank.
So the question is, as we look at that, so they're looking at about $290,000 worth of payments every single day. Now, Chip, this is right on their website. All right. So the payment prompts feature a checklist based on uncharacteristic activity designed to get the customer to pause and review the payment prior to hitting send. Now, I would have already expected that there should be a checks and balance before you send any money, right? You shouldn't just say send and it sends. It should say send,
that's everywhere though.
Review, and are you sure you want to send it? Yes, I want to send it. So at least that's in place, but it's kind of bizarre. I don't know. We'd have to see exactly how this functions, but do they really, are they really doing any kind of investigation? Is that what stopped the payments, or is there something else? Did the bank themselves stop the payments? And is it the bank's responsibility to stop a payment, or is it the individual consumer's responsibility to make sure that you're not transferring your money over to a scam? Now, Uphold is doing the same thing, and I think that's why it kind of relates. When you're moving money on Uphold and when you're getting ready to process a transaction, Chip, the one thing that it asks you is, are you sure you know this person? Did someone ask for this money? Maybe it's a potential scam. So even Uphold is doing that, highlighting the fact that you might be moving your money to a scam, and to investigate a little bit. Do you know this person? Is this somebody you know? So I think it's interesting. I don't mind that part of it if you have a couple extra questions. But Chip, what I do mind is if they block movement. If you try to move your money to buy crypto to an exchange, and the bank blocks you moving your money to that exchange and says you can't move your money. So imagine they're not happy with Uphold. They say, no, you can no longer move your money to Uphold.
Right. Well, this is a precursor to what CBDCs are, right? So bank exercises control and tells you how you're going to spend your money, your value, and where you're going to move it to. And again, it's great to have a preview of what CBDCs will be with, because it'll be on
Where, Chip and Jeff? Where?
I don't know. I guess that's a timely comment. You got to position it.
So here's another one. Adam is bringing up. So I know people on precious metal forums having issues buying metals from bullion dealers. What country?
Boy.
Are we talking Australia? Or are we talking about which country are we talking about? And that could also then relate. But that's interesting. Again, that's moving your money into an asset, a commodity, whatever direction you're putting your money, that's not going to be held within the bank. So there could be some confusion there. Someone brought up, where'd it go, regarding Fed Now. There it is. Jim D brought up with Fed Now. So, you have the Australian OSCO moving money. Europe has something also for fast transaction of payment. The US has Zelle to move money between banks. And now we have Fed Now, which is rolling out. And Jim D brings up a good point. There's no way to get your money back or to contest a transaction after it's sent, which is very similar to Zelle. Once you send Zelle, you don't get it back. Similar to a crypto payment. Once you send it, trying to retract it is difficult. All of these elements really there has to be some sort of mechanism for the parties to retract money. That's why people want to use credit cards. They don't want to send money like that. You're not going to send Zelle unless you really know the person, or you're not going to use whatever transaction. An ACH, if you do an ACH, you have a period of time to retract it, I think up to 30 days. If you do a bank wire, there's no mechanism to retract. Once it's sent,
it's not 30 days.
That's it. What is the ACH? There's a long period of time on an ACH.
I think it's for businesses. I think it's like 10 days. I know of an ACH recently went through for a couple $100,000 that couldn't be. I read recently couldn't be retracted. In time they passed the time on it. But ACH is an antiquated system. The problem I have with the Fed Now is that there's zero transparency in this. Okay, you can tell me what your partners are. I really don't care. What I want to know is your tech. What is the underlying tech? Because is this another What it sounds like to me, what FedNow sounds like to me, Jeff, is Zelle with a fun name. That's what it sounds like. It sounds like Zelle is person to person, right? And companies can send it to each other. But what they've created is FedNow nothing more than a Zelle. And when we talk about Zelle, if you're outside of the US, it's a fake real-time payment system. It's not real time. What happens is if I send Jeff, you can either register with an email or you can register with a phone number. And if you get it wrong, someone says, "Oh no, I registered my phone number." You send it to their phone number, and they didn't register with the phone number, then it gets tied up for 2 weeks before you can reclaim the payment. And that happened one time with me when I was trying to pay a contractor, and got hung up for like 10 days, right? But so they come out with FedNow, instant payments. Okay, great. So let's break down the money line. Your actual money that you actually see at a bank, probably 5% of what we use today is a number. You see it on a computer screen. I see it on my phone app, my bank's phone app. It doesn't really exist, Jeff. And here's the thing: is like when I'm looking at when I'm looking here, if we did a bank run, pick a community bank, pick a national bank. If everybody who has an account there shows up and gets a couple $100, it would probably collapse that particular branch. They would run out of the actual fiat. They don't have enough fiat currency. So this whole idea of a CBDC never made any sense because it's mostly digital representation anyway. But do you think when they press a button and they go ahead and mint the Federal Reserve $1 billion or $1 trillion, do you think they actually print $1 trillion? No, they press a button on a computer and all of a sudden that enters the money supply. So I'm really very, very skeptical of FedNow. I can see all the different payments, but if I say, Jeff, I'm gonna let's say a community bank, and I'm sending it to let's say a national type of a bank, and I'm sending it cross country, right? And the payments there, I see it. I want to know when the remittance happens. I want to know when the actual money shows up. If it is instantaneous, what is the tech, and why isn't it transparent? I've been trying to dig to find out. Maybe not hard enough. The tech's not published. If you're not publishing the tech about how you're doing this, I don't believe you. I'm sorry, I just don't.
So basically, that process is just an IOU. It's just one bank's IOU to another.
But we don't know, Jeff.
That's true. We don't know that, but that should be how it's being done because the settlement is still going through ACH, or maybe it's doing, who knows what exactly is happening. But as far as if I send you money on Zelle, you get it. All of a sudden you have the money. Now the question is, can the banks retract it? I know, there's all sorts of, things that can be done. It's just really bizarre. But to your point, if you go into a bank tomorrow and you say, I've got $1 million sitting in this bank account and I want to take it all out, or you have 250,000, you're at the max limit of the FDIC, and you say, hey, I want to take my money out, and they'll say, we don't have the fiat. Or if you say, I want to transfer my $250,000 right now, I don't want to go through ACH, I don't want to wait for settlement period, I want you to send it over to my digital wallet right now, send it over to me so I can walk away with it. If they have a CBDC, in theory, you should be able to put it onto an external hardware wallet and take your money out of the bank and move it someplace else instantaneously. So then that questions, are the banks, how are they then leveraging your money? Like right now, supposedly, they're able to leverage your money. If you put, your money, you have 250,000 sitting in the bank, they're going to take some of that money and they're only going to really have like 10% available, whatever, total volume of, I don't know what their percentage is, but they're lending out money. It is very bizarre, Chip. It's because there's no dollar bills sitting in a vault someplace. They're supposed to have, I thought, aren't they supposed to have dollar for dollar? Isn't there, an access point where they're supposed to be able to pull your money out? I'm sure it's in the fine print someplace with these banks. I don't even know how it works anymore, Chip. It's so confusing.
No, it's massively confusing, but I'm like, just the fact that there's no tech on it, the fact that like it's so shrouded in mystery. Like, how do we not know what it is? And you think they'd be proud of it, right? And I'm honestly, Jeff, I understand like some people there's been a lot of way too much speculation going around Twitter, and just I've heard influencers talk about the fact that I've heard them mention R3. No. I've heard them mention, Ripple's part of it. No. I've heard they're using XRP. Not that anybody can tell And that, okay, yes, there's a couple Ripple partners in there, but again, what are they actually doing? What are they facilitating? And do we think, and then when you hear interviews, they say like, oh no, this was homegrown, the Fed built it. Do you really think the Federal Reserve, a government agency mired in bureaucracy and the inability to get shit done, they went ahead and they created game-changing real-time payment system? I'm not buying it. I'm sorry. I mean, if it's true, that's great. Unveil your tech, lay it out there. Now, there's a way to do it without real, because I understand it's going to be proprietary. If it is, if you're using partners, let us know. But that part has been very weird to me. Jeff, I wanted to.
Nothing, Chip.
It's just it just doesn't matter to me. I don't care.
They don't build anything.
No, they don't. They don't. Just remember, at the end of the day, any government doesn't build anything. They don't make anything. They just take. They're takers. They take your money and then they misappropriate it for the most part on what they want to do. So they don't do anything other than take your money through supposed taxes. I mean, Yoshikawa put this out there, and this is interesting. Ripple's proud to be sponsoring the upcoming WebX in Asia, organized by CoinPost, taking place on July 25th to 26th at Tokyo International Forum in Japan. If you're attending, be sure to stop by booth D14, and that's where you'll be able to stop by and learn a little bit more about Ripple there too. But you can see that I was like, is that the Eiffel Tower? No, it's not the Eiffel Tower. It's like it's Tokyo, but I was like,
in the middle of Japan.
I was like, what the hell? It's like it's a little. I'm not even familiar with what this building is. Forgive my stupidity. But anyway, I thought that was a pretty interesting.
It's very cool. Yeah. So, man, let's dig into the. We had so much to cover, but now we're running short. Let's go through some of these Deaton tweets and then dig into the bill if we can. This is
So finally,
a lot of great stuff. Fit.
Terrett put this out,
and you know it.
Breaking the Financial Innovation and Technology for the first 21st Century Act. That's what we get, the FIT, Financial Innovation Technology. I like that innovation's part of this, though, Jeff. 21st Century Act was introduced today by French Hill and Dusty Johnson. Establishes a regulatory framework for digital assets. Here's the full text. Jeff, how many pages is this actually?
Dude, it was 200 plus pages. Chip, you sent it to me when I was on a flight, and I'm trying to read this thing, and I'm looking through this bill, and you're like, let's dissect this thing, and I'm just.
And it was like late. How late was it last night? 1:30 in the morning. You and I were still talking about it. It's like 1:30 in the morning. Jeff and I were still talking about it, back and forth, issuing. It was funny. So he said, but the devil
so crazy is in the details.
Honestly, the devil's in the details. Maybe some evil lurking within. I'll reserve my opinion until I can digest it all. Well, I still haven't seen Deaton's digest it all yet. I mean,
there's a lot to digest.
Came out.
Might have to have ChatGPT digest it or something. But the nice part about it is that they released a myths and facts document to go along with the bill. There's some interesting things that are going on in the bill. There's a summary, break it down section by section. There are some addendums to the Securities Act of 33 and 34 and beyond, which takes from the Token Taxonomy Act. A lot of stuff to go through. The myths and facts, though, Chip, I think is fun to read through because it really highlights these two committees. You have the Agricultural Committee, you have the Financial Services Committee, and they're breaking it down with myths and facts. And the myths is a myth buster straight over. It's a shot fired over the bow of the SEC of Gary Gensler, which is quite perfect. So what's
it's like one of the myths here: all digital assets other than Bitcoin are securities and should be regulated by the Securities and Exchange Commission. I think that's a direct quote from Gary Gensler, even though they don't cite him there. It's just like, that's a myth fact. Not all digital assets are securities, while some digital assets can be offered as part of an investment contract, and some may be tokenized, a clear framework for determining when a digital asset's not a security. And this is kind of cool right here because they reference the Supreme Court's Howey test to characterize certain digital assets. And then they go on here, which is really interesting, is the fact that they cite the XRP decision in July of 2023, July 13th. Everyone knows that date. It's been green.
This is very solid. That second bullet point, again, if we look at this in a direct comparative to the SEC considering an appeal, which now if you read this one paragraph, it seems like the SEC's appeal of that decision seems insane, right? Because here, Chip, you have the XRP decision in July 2023 determined that XRP was only part of an investment contract when offered directly by Ripple to institutional investors. The decision called into question the SEC's position that practically all digital assets are securities. The SEC's policy was rejected by the court, which highlights the need for legislation. I like that. There's something really critical that they're underscoring within their bullet point for this bill and the myths and facts that go along with it. And the fact is that you can use a digital asset as a security. It is not a security on its own. And in this scenario, it was offered by Ripple because they were selling to institutional investors that bought that with
a
an
contract.
expectation, with a contract, with an expectation of gain under that contract. So Gary Gensler off the mark completely on that. The fact they're even going to try to appeal it, and this again, which highlights the need for legislation. Get legislation. There's going to be no appeal by Gary Gensler. There won't be anything to appeal at that point because it'll be packed into legislation the way it needs to be.
They go into this one too. Actually, was this one on here? Let me see. What the heck here? Yeah, so this kind of missed the page, but myth. Digital assets facilitate financial crimes such as money laundering. Legislation would legitimize a harmful industry. So I love how they're tackling these, Jeff, because this is all the BS. I don't think we can go 100 years into the future with blockchain. I don't think we're never going to get anywhere close to all the abuse. You and I covered this maybe a week or two ago with the fines to the bank. And then just that very next day, there was a big one to another big bank of $250 million that need to be paid out. So when there's a lot of, they talk about illicit activity. The illicit activity happens when you can't trace it. That's why it happens with fiat currency, because anytime it's been used illicitly on the blockchain, it can always be traced back to a wallet. And if they can pin that wallet on who that wallet is, and that they've disclosed that on social media, so fiat is always going to be king when it comes to when it comes to illicit activity, right? Let's suppose you're going to ship pallets of cash to a country, Jeff. You're not going to do it with a bank wire. You're not going to do it any other way. Why? Because, well, if a pallets of cash show up, they're unmarked. They just make their way into the stream. So the fact that it facilitates financial crimes such as money laundering, the fact blockchain tech allows for better transaction tracing and asset monitoring than what is available with traditional finance.
All right. And by putting a cap on blockchain, on crypto, because of the possibility that someone might try to use it for illicit purpose, really goes to and highlights, some of these key points that a bad actor will always be a bad actor. There's always that possibility that you're going to have a bad actor, and you can't stop a bad actor from acting simply because you're going to try to block their access, Chip, to a digital asset. Bad actors will be bad actors. The whole notion of Gary Gensler trying to protect people is just bullshit. And you cannot protect people from bad actors by harming the innocent. And we're seeing that's kind of a trend, right? You have this one group that's in politics seems to think that it's up to them to protect everybody, and
which
they're
group
going
is
to
that,
pass.
The blue group.
Guess which group? And they think that they can pass abusive legislation to protect people, so they're going to harm innocent with the potential of stopping some future crime. It's so irrational. It makes no logic sense. It's a complete dysfunction of government entity where you think you can prevent a future crime by punishing the innocent today. It's so stupid. But we see it repeated over and over and over again.
Well, I remember this here. They said in 2021, hackers took control of Colonial Pipeline's computer network, forced it to pay $2.3 million in Bitcoin to regain control over the network. The FBI basically used the transaction history on the Bitcoin blockchain to find the Bitcoin and return it to Colonial Pipeline. So it's like, it's just, these are so obvious myths and facts, but again, you have to say it because you're right. Who do you think is going to read this? No one's going to actually read the bill. So you got to read they broke it down into two things: facts and myths, and then the overview. Because the legalese in this bill is just it's soul crushing, Jeff. It's really rough to go through that, and probably even for attorneys, it's like all this legalese and opinion. It has to be set forth in a right way, but it's not a really readable bill. Not like the token taxonomy, not like the ones that Tom Emmer came out with. Another one here: existing legal frameworks can accommodate legal assets. Digital asset market participants simply need to come in and register. Where have we heard that before? With the SEC into compliance with the U.S. security laws. And go ahead and read that fact, Jeff. Pull that one out.
This is a good fact. The SEC's existing regulatory regime is not designed to accommodate the registration and regulation of digital assets. So you put that right at the top. Now, this is coming from two committees, from Congress that are specifically specifying that fact as a fact, where Gary Gensler is going to say the exact opposite. Obviously, the SEC has failed to provide the clarity these entities need to operate. Instead, the SEC has used its enforcement authority to regulate the market. The SEC must ensure that the rules and regulations provide the roadmap for all firms seeking to participate in the digital asset ecosystem. This is where I think, Chip, I don't know if you agree, but I will have a complete departure from that fact. And I think that this fact is incorrect to the point where
which part of
the
it? What do you?
The SEC, if they're so let's put maybe it's not a departure, but but the SEC has failed to provide the clarity these entities need to operate. I don't know.
That's incorrect.
That,
yeah.
Right. It's not up to the SEC to provide the clarity. The fact is, there is no clarity. And if you go to number one, when we first started reading, is that this underscores the need for legislation. We need legislation. There's no rules. So how can the SEC provide clarity if there's no rules? Right. So the SEC is making it up. They're making up their own clarity. And that's a problem. Right. And so here, the SEC is obviously used enforcement authority. Now, Gary Gensler could have taken a different approach, and he could have said, in the absence of clarity, let's walk through this. There's no legislation on the books. Let's use old legislation, but let's all walk through this and find a positive outcome. But instead, Gary Gensler took his approach, which is direct to enforcement. Say, you don't do it. You're not doing it my way. I'm going to sue you, and I'm going to come after you. I'm going to try to dismantle your company, and I want to block the development of cryptocurrency. That's the direction that Gary Gensler chose to take. It's unfortunate here. So the SEC must ensure that the rules and regulations provide the roadmap for all firms seeking to participate in the digital ecosystem. In the absence of rules and regulations, how does the SEC then ensure that the rules and regulations are providing a roadmap for the firms that want to participate? So firms come to the SEC, say, I want to participate. The SEC says, well, there are no guidelines, right? Or Gary Gensler says it's clear. And then the firm says, well, I don't know that it's clear. How is it clear? There's no roadmap. But now Congress is saying, well, SEC, you have to ensure that the rules are abided by. But there's no rules. I mean, this is a little bit of a conflict here.
Jeff, I will say this. I agree with you because this mistake has been made over and over again. It's even slipped by people in Congress that when inside of a hearing, they're like, you've issued no rulemaking, whatever. But one of the things that came up when Gensler was in a hearing the other day is that it was surfaced when he said, like, well, what about the rulemaking? And Gensler brought up, well, the previous chair, Jay Clayton, he issued whatever it was, 200 plus rulemaking over a 4-year period. And we're like, and they said, but yeah, so far 2 years into it, you're already at, whatever it is, 100 and change, whatever. And he says, yeah, well, this is a course over the course of 4 years, but we might be a little bit ahead in the beginning. But again, it probably averages out. What he's trying to say is like, this is unusual for you to have this much rulemaking. But one of the things that I felt like was really obvious in that statement was you made all this rulemaking that went on, and not one rule came out about crypto. And if it was so clear and you're so happy to go out there and jump out and make rules, that's odd. Why didn't you make any rules? Oh, wait, what? No rulemaking from Gary Gensler, the guy who said it was so clear, it was so understandable. He made zero rulemaking on that. Why? Because he didn't want to tie it back to himself. He knew it wasn't clear, and he knew that. And he was hanging his hat on 1933, 1934 Exchange Act, the 1947 Howey test from the Supreme Court. He was saying that's so clear. Meanwhile, everyone's like scratching their head, like, what? The whole come in and register thing. This is great because it takes apart that little, feckless coward, Gary Gensler, totally rips him apart. I don't know if we'll have a chance to go through all this. I think we just kind of like breeze through it. There's a bunch of these because I want to rip into some of the bill here too. I wanted to, before we go any further though, Oscar has a really good point here. He's like, I think the only reason the SEC is appealing so we can all make more content. And Oscar's made some awesome videos. So I'm like, I just want to see some more awesome videos. And of course, Jeff, you and I want to talk about it. But I think that, Oscar, I think you're spot on there. Jim D says that the whole notion that the white knights protecting the peasants is ridiculous. The knights always put the peasants out in front with pitchforks as the knights direct the battle campaign and settle terms.
True.
And that's 100% true. And the funny thing is, this whole idea, it violates the Constitution and the free speech and everything we're supposed to do as a free people. And if you consider yourself a free, it's a God-given issued right. You were born free, and then somebody is going to have some power over you, and some big entity is going to look out for you. They're not looking out for the poor schmuck that goes to Vegas and bets it all on black or puts it all on red or goes to by the way, if you've ever been to a casino, they have these, you can get fiat currency out pretty much anywhere in the casino. Go right over to where get some chips, turn them in for chips, and now your money becomes these little chips, and then you go, boom, and then there goes 10 grand. Weird. Nobody cares about that protection, but they want to make sure they're going to protect you with digital assets because they're bad. There's always something underlying that has nothing to do with protecting you. This whole thing's got surfaced. This whole SEC thing surfaced all of that.
You get little chips at the casino.
See that, chips?
Chips
are good.
Little chips
is good. Congress, here's another myth. Congress is working with the digital asset ecosystem to create light touch regulations and prevent the SEC from being able to police digital assets. Fact. Digital asset market structure legislation updates existing securities law to give the SEC full authority over digital assets that are offered as part of an investment contract. In other words, when they become a security and they stop becoming a commodity, the SEC will step in. And what they're really saying here is that because it further updates the commodities laws to provide the CFTC with legal authority over digital commodity markets. It's a shame that they have to say this, but you and I, as well as many other in the community, as well as many in the chat, have been saying this for years, that the SEC has no right to regulate it because it's a commodity, Jeff.
And the commodities fall under the CFTC. The CFTC falls under the House Committee on Agriculture.
Correct.
So hence the House Committee on Agriculture, Financial Services Committee. It's important that the two are coming together, but that's why we're seeing this. And there's a little bit of a tension right now between who should regulate. And if there's a split regulation, and that's where having clear legislation that comes out of all of this is going to be really important, because it'll provide the rules. We need rules of the road. We need to know under whose authority this market falls. And so if it falls under the SEC authority because they believe it to be a security and they're protecting the general public from companies trying to sell unregistered securities, that's the direction the legislation is going to push it. But from this last case,
you didn't even tell me when my microphone wasn't working right. I had the wrong mic. You didn't notice the difference?
No. When was it not working?
What's wrong with you, man? Was using like
it was perfect.
Was it?
Oh, yeah. Until just now, I just heard.
Until just now, when I actually turned my microphone on. Come on, man.
Well, all of a sudden I heard your dog barking.
Yeah, because you heard your dog barking because I didn't have crisp on and this microphone wasn't on.
Oh, really? Oh, this whole time it sounded like you did.
I rely on you to let me know that.
Microphone check.
All right, I'm gonna have to employ the chat to tell me when my microphone's not working. Jeff can't hear the difference, but obviously you guys can. And it just switches it every time. I would set it and forget it, but now it's a whole.
It does. It does switch it every time.
Every single
never know.
time, and if I forget to do it, it's. Well, I can tell.
I'm running crisp right now. Unfortunately, you got to check. We got to look.
It's ridiculous, Jeff. The whole
we got to
thing
check. Well, that's the thing, is that you've got your headset, and so if it goes if it switches, it's probably going to your headset mic, which is right here.
Yeah, I think it was the headset mic, but
if
it's
mine
still,
ever switches, which it doesn't because I shut it off, it goes to my camera microphone, which is way over there. So it's going to be very obvious.
but I think you guys can tell the difference in there. Yes, pretty sure they can. Helicopter microphone. Yeah, that too. The helicopter microphone. Congress is fundamentally reshaping time-tested U.S. securities and commodities laws to accommodate digital assets. The fact is that the Congress is tailoring very specific sections of U.S. securities and commodities laws to ensure that the SEC and the CFTC have the authority needed. Again, something else that doesn't need to be, it shouldn't need to be said, but of course.
But yeah, they need to break it down. I mean, that's in the absence of all of that. Once they clarify it, it gets written in, it gets codified. It's really important. Even to break it down we have to dummy this down to a first grade level, mainly because if you don't, and it's not every little detail and line item isn't outlined, then you have people like Gary Gensler that are going to try to, gain authority over it. And they're going to try to find every little loophole, and they're going to wiggle through and find a way to try to manipulate it. And this is where the legislation becomes difficult, because they have to make sure that it's airtight so that a weasel that's in charge can't find a way to undermine the legislation and try to gain extra power.
Alchemist says Senator John Kennedy is a bad actor. Alchemist, good to see you, man. I felt like we were missing dissent here for a while. You weren't showing up, and we had no dissent. So I don't know what we were supposed to do. We were like pretty much lockstep. But this one here, I think, is probably one of the biggest myths but digital assets lack any real use case. Okay, existing technologies and traditional financial systems can replicate any of the benefits claimed by digital asset supporters. And the fact is, the digital assets offer a variety of unique and novel use cases that both supplement traditional financial and technological systems, new products, services, blah, blah, blah. But Jeff, when you were saying dumb it down to a first grade level, I thought you were going to say for the blue team, but that didn't follow. But I thought that's what you were going to.
For all teams. I think everybody needs it dummied it down to a first grade level.
Well, also
because otherwise they're not going to understand it.
Well, remember we had Rep. Warren Davidson on, and he said that I have colleagues that hate digital assets probably as much or more than some of the Democrats. He even came in here and said, he said that, and he said, you hear about more pro. He goes, but there are people, there are Republicans that just loathe it. He goes, you just don't hear about it.
They don't understand it. They don't understand it. They don't take the time to understand it. Jeff, Lummis was all Bitcoin centric.
In the 1700s, the 1800s, there was no tech to understand, right? It was like you had a tractor, you didn't have a tractor. You had commerce, you didn't have commerce. Once we started getting into computers, and once we started getting into, digitizing money, basically, from the 70s, as we evolved into the 80s and started using computers and spreadsheets and stuff, there's a certain level of tech that just is misunderstood. And this is where, if you look at most of the people in Congress, most of the representatives, whether in the House of Representatives or in the Senate, a lot of them are attorneys. You think they could comprehend a lot of the stuff. Jeff.
But the reason why they don't is because of the fact that they're attorneys. That's like, it's like a doctor, for instance. How many doctors are good business people? The majority of them, I would say 95 to 98% of all doctors are really horrible business people, but they could be great doctors. There's a small percentage. Same thing with attorneys. Why do we expect that an attorney that goes into government all of a sudden understands economics? They didn't study economics. They don't understand economics. They don't, they can read about it. So there's going to be a small percentage of them that have a departure from legalese to understand the financial aspect of it. It's not difficult, once you start breaking it down and getting into it and understanding it and having a passion for it. They can, but the majority of them haven't studied it, don't study it, don't understand it, and will still try to legislate based on that misunderstanding. And it's completely unfortunate, but that's kind of the reality, that we're faced with. And then we rely on these attorneys to do amazing things with our budget. We're like, hey, let the attorneys manage our budget. Do you go to your attorney or do you go to your CPA when it's time to do your accounting and your taxes and everything? It's very clear and obvious, which direction we go in. The one point though, and I think those that misunderstand the crypto asset space, there's two directions they're going in. One, they believe that digital assets are used for nefarious purposes. That's the myth that they and that's the only thing they're used for. The other one, and I believe this is where members of the red team are probably approaching this, is that the country loses sovereign control over the currency, and they believe that that's what's happening with the digital asset space. They don't understand the tech; they just see the myths, and they believe that if you're going to have a whole bunch of digital assets out there, the country loses complete sovereign control over the dollar. Because of that. And so I think that's where the balancing act is. And then it's used for nefarious purposes. And they don't understand, again, they don't understand the tech. They don't take the 2 moments to understand the tech.
This is something interesting that did come up in the hearing is, and this is a good thing that Alchemist is pointing out, that John Kennedy put a false opposition because they pal around in back rooms and they're all bad actors. I always say, yeah, we enjoy our time hanging out together. That's what's like, something to that. I'm paraphrasing. So it's good to see you again. Then they rip into each other on camera and blah, blah, blah. And there's a lot of that going on where especially in the Supreme Court, if you see like some of the people that are actually friendly, they will vehemently oppose each other and opinions, but then they go out to dinner and spend time at lunch and all that kind of stuff.
They're all buddies. They're all buddies. That's the problem. Yeah.
Bullshit.
So here's hydroponics.
Very easy hydroponics, Alan. Yeah.
Yeah, he's saying how many 6-year-old attorneys, and I know he meant 60, but for this point, how many 6-year-old attorneys know how to use their cell phone? Nevertheless, technology so advanced like crypto. Well, the 6-year-old knows how to use their cell phone, is probably is probably already understanding crypto. To teach the 60-year-old politicians that don't understand the technology because they can barely use their cell phones. But I don't want to put
60.
I don't want to put.
I think we're talking about
60-year-olds
and 80.
There, right?
I mean, most of them are trending over 75, and
I don't want to put the 60-year-olds.
Let's not be too crazy on that. Yeah,
the 60s out there were.
Well, let's get into this, Jeff. We're running out of time here.
Beginning of computer tech.
Let's put this up here. This again, what they did was they released the actual text of the bill itself is here. Okay, and this is just
read it from start to finish.
This is just gobbledygook. This is just look at this stuff, and I really hate the way I like the pleadings and there's always formats, and this is what the format they put these bills in, which is just wasted space. And look at this stuff. It's why it's 200 pages, but look at the indent on both sides, like 3 inches, whatever. And then you've got this massive space here, so you can cite the page number. You can cite exactly where. Hey, for example, they'll say line number 10 on page whatever, and they can talk about it. But this stuff here, I mean, we're on page 58, and they're still going through, phrases and stuff and talking about what's an indication of interest, any written communication described. Again, it's something that has to be done. But again, that's why they put this out, which was a little bit more readable. And one of the things that they talk about that Jeff teased a little bit earlier, Section 504, which modernization of the Securities and Exchange Commission's mission. 504 amends the Security Act of 1933 and Securities Act of 34 and the Investment Advisors Act of 1940 by adding innovation to the factors the SEC must consider when issuing rulemaking.
That's interesting.
And Section 505 requires the CFTC and SEC to conduct study on decentralized finance, known as DeFi, and include any analysis of the size, scope, role, and nature of the DeFi protocols, benefits, risk of DeFi, how DeFi is integrated into traditional financial markets. So I thought that was easy. I'm also going to bring up this other one. Let me search.
There's also a study on NFTs. I would like to see a study on blockchain for voting. One person, one vote. That's what I would like to see also somehow packed into that. So if they start negotiating it, they should somehow try to figure out how to get that into the legislation.
This was the one that caused a little bit of I know it got me in the initial stages too, because you have to go back to the original text to read it, and it kind of just flies by. And a lot of people were reading this online and not quite understanding it. But Section 201, exempted transactions in digital assets. You're like, well, what's this all about? Section 201 establishes an exemption for the security laws for digital asset issuer sales of digital assets that meet the following condition. Now, if you miss this word issuer sale, Jeff, that really kind of talks to the initial sort of a public
exchange.
offering, right? It's like
no, I guess that would be potentially to the public offering. I believe so. I think this has to do with the issuer, which would fall under an ICO.
Right, an ICO, like the issuers, like the way they talk about this, and again, it's like it's so confusing in the text. But they go on to say that you have to meet these conditions. Number one, the issuer's total sales of the digital asset over the prior 12 months does not exceed 75 million. So the issuer, in this case, if you had like, let's say Yeti Coin, and Yeti Coin was issuing the Yeti Coin, and you say like, so Yeti's issuing Yeti Coin, Yeti would be the issuer, right? So the issuer's total sales of the digital assets over the prior 12 months cannot exceed 75 million. So what they're basically doing is capping that. So regardless of how many those digital assets you sell over a 12-month period, it cannot exceed 75 million. Don't know how you police that. But number two, a non-accredited investor's purchases of the digital assets. Okay, so this was something that I saw that Terrett put out that Patrick McHenry fought hard for, which is to have non-accredited investors. You have to usually, to participate in initial public offering with stocks, you have to be an accredited investor. So what they didn't want to have those same rules in place, so they wanted to make sure non-accredited investors could participate. And what they're saying here is that a non-accredited investor's purchases of the digital asset from the issuer over the prior 12 months are less than the greater of 10% of the purchaser's annual income, or 10% of their net worth.
Interesting. So then it goes on. So it's that and this next statement.
Yeah, go ahead and read the next one, Jeff. Can you read that one or no?
So the purchaser does not own more than 10% of the units of the digital asset after the completion of the transaction. So 10% of the total units of the transaction, and the transaction involves the sale of digital asset as part of an investment contract. So now it has to be part of an investment contract also, because you're buying as a non-accredited investor into that ICO. So this is interesting because without it, a non-accredited investor wouldn't be able to participate. Here they're giving a path to a non-accredited investor to participate, for good or bad, however you want to look at this. I don't like the notion of limitation, because like Chip said earlier, you can go to the casino, you can gamble away more than 10% of your income and more than 10% of your net worth in one night at a casino. But yet, if you want to invest in a brand new endeavor through an ICO, you're not allowed to do that right now. But with this, it's giving you a path to invest either 10% of your annual income or 10% of your net worth, whichever is greater. So it has to be less than that. So at least it's a path. Without it, there was no path. It's.
Well, I also feel like too, like one of the key differentiators here is like, instead of some random meme coin coming out and being a total rug pull, what they're talking about, this new exemption incorporates the requirements from exemptions from registration of public offerings. So in other words, you can actually go and see if there's a new coin that's coming out. You can see if it is registered with the CFTC, SEC, versus some random people with Jimmy Crypto in their title, and they issue a coin. Nobody knows who they are, and there's no registration, and it's just the rugs.
That's really who they should be going after, Chip.
It really should be, and it's like, so there's a lot to unpack in this whole thing. I mean, thank God they put this piece of it out.
Oh,
what's up, Aaron?
You just woke up. Nice. All right.
He just woke up. Come give Dad a hug. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Enhanced disclosures, requirements, certification of certain digital assets. 204 provides for a process of blockchain related to digital assets to be certified as decentralized. So the certification process permits any person to certify to the SEC that the blockchain network meets the requirement of the act. As part of this process, an individual will submit general information pertaining to the blockchain network and analysis of the 4 factors which decentralization is based. The certification is considered automatically approved after 30 days. Unless the commission issues a stay, the SEC may rebut the certification, which may be appealed by the party making the certification. This, I think, is misplaced, because just in my opinion here is like when they say the certification process certified at the SEC. Now, you would certify it with the CFTC. If the CFTC came back and said it wasn't decentralized, then it would be referred to the SEC. So this is backwards. And do you want to trust the SEC? They're going to say, that's not decentralized. That's not decentralized. I mean, with the way that's been going with the SEC, why would you, if you assume that it's a commodity out of the its founding, right? It's out of the gate, it's a commodity. And then all of a sudden you say like, well, no, you would go with the CFTC. And if it wasn't properly decentralized, then it would go to the SEC, as they're the ones that regulate securities. Jeff, I don't know. Does this seem weird to you? Am I missing something here?
They brought this up before on how they wanted to migrate around and move around. I mean, there really has to be a mechanism. So if it's going to go through, it really needs to go. There has to be an analysis process. But do you want to have the company make a determination which direction to go to, or when you go through the registration process, you're checking off the boxes, and someone's got to look at it when you're registering and say this falls within the guidelines of an SEC or falls within the guidelines of the CFTC, or should there be a whole new division that just is, overseeing the development of blockchain? Do you adjust? Is there a blending? Is there one committee? Is it relevant now to have two separate committees? What's going to happen?
I don't know, Jeff. I will say this though. I want to put this up here. I just because we're getting close here in time, but I did put this up here, which is crafting tunes with Bitcoin Maxis is a blast. They hit harder than a bull market. And so I thought we would sort of like, let me go ahead and share my screen here to make sure we have this.
Crypto Bob reminds us, first they laugh at you, then they fight you, then they regulate you.
We're in the regulation stage here, but this is
regulation stage.
This is with the Bitcoin Maxis. Yeah, who knows why that happened? It's annoying as hell, this whole thing. Here we go. So let me turn this on. Let's do this. But this is what it's like making a tune with the Bitcoin Maxi. Here we go. Let's see this. Tell me if you don't hear it, Jeff.
What are you doing? Can you hear it?
You hear it or not? Do you hear that?
You didn't add it. You didn't add it.
Oh, sorry. That might be why you don't. That's probably why you don't see it. Here we go.
There we go. Oh, now you removed it.
Second, man.
There you go.
There we go. Here we go. Bitcoin Maxi.
Oh.
I'm gonna write a song with this random guy hitting my window.
Bitcoin Maxi.
We're gonna. Oi, come back!
Anyway, Jeff, I don't know what happened there, but something.
Very interesting indeed. So, man, we
thought
are
this was-
at that moment.
Hang on a second. I wanted to put this up too. I thought this was interesting. Let's go here. Gabriel Shapiro put this up. This is interesting. And I have a feeling this is based on the bill we just picked apart here. But he said, I would strongly recommend people move away from the DAO, decentralized autonomous organization, in similar terms, call them smart governance systems or similar, emphasis on it being software instead of an organization. I can't do a long thread, but many legal factors, including pending legislation, play into this. Interesting, Jeff. Your thoughts?
Say it again. Put it back up.
There you go.
There we go. I would strongly suggest people move away from the DAO in similar terms, call them smart. That's interesting. So a lot of this, everything that's being done right now in the crypto space, which is another reason to even rename crypto, make it easier for people to understand, take away some of the acronyms, take away some of the misunderstandings in the space, make it more mainstream. Smart governance systems. I don't know, that might be a little, too much also, instead of an org, I can, I don't know. I just think, renaming some of the stuff to make it more mainstream, could be important.
Yeah, absolutely. I think
That's all.
for sure. Yeah. Well, the thing is just trying to get away. You're trying to get around the legalese, the issues that are happening around that. I had two other things here. Quick hits to show here, but only because I talked about it, so I want to make sure we play it. And people always go like, "Yeah, you talked about this, but you never actually put that up there." And like that does happen sometimes. But what are you going to do? Because there's just a lot we can actually cover. So that's one of the reasons that happens. Okay, let's see. Where are we? Here we go. I'm gonna have to reshare my screen again because of this stupid video here. Let's do this.
Hey, Dirk.
Dirk, what's up? Let me go ahead and hit click share, and let me click the right tab.
What are
And
we sharing?
I'm sharing Bill Morgan, who we've heard an awful lot. We've quoted him a ton on the show, but again, like I talked about, the Brisbane get together had happened.
Yep.
Here we go. That happened like yesterday.
And
so this is the Wave of Innovation is the one that's putting together the XRP Gold Coast 2024 that's coming up in March that we talked about. That is Bill Morgan. You probably don't know what he looks like because you just see him from his Twitter account. But let me make this full screen. Make sure it's up. This is that's Bill Morgan. So it's a little bit loud in the background, Jeff, but here we go.
Should be using Chris.
What's your take on where we're at in the case at the moment?
I think where we're at is that everything's really good for XRP holders. The token itself is not a security. It doesn't matter what happens if there's an appeal or a review. That was just a comment the judge made. Lawyers call it obiter dicta, which means it's just an opinion of the judge. If the matter goes on appeal in relation to programmatic sales, there's no reason why that a court on hearing an appeal would change that finding by the judge. It just won't happen. And so XRP holders can go forward knowing that their token itself is not a security, and that's not going to change.
There you go.
He's spot on about that, Jeff. I mean, it's not going to change at all.
It's good. I think what we're seeing is the ripple effect of the outcome of this case all the way across the ocean, over to Australia, over to Europe, all over the place. People are feeling the outcome. I think it's really important. Before we talk about, well, what difference does it make what the outcome is? The outcome is significant. The U.S. is still a very critical part of critical market for the development of this space. So if you were to remove the U.S., if the outcome of the case was different, I think you would have a completely different outcome on a global scale, where you might even see countries moving in the exact same direction, other SECs around the world moving in the same direction. So I think identifying the outcome of XRP, vital. It's so vital, and that's what we're hearing, over in Australia. It can't be changed at this point. The SEC is going to try to appeal it. It should just set that in stone further. Hopefully Congress works faster than an appeal and solidifies legislation here in the U.S. As we're seeing in other parts of the world. It's really important right now. Now's the moment. Now's the moment for it all to happen right.
Yeah, and who cares if the SEC, by the time this goes through, it'll be 2025. Legislation will happen before then. It's just a stupid effort. And even like a lot of the legal minds have said they can appeal it all they want. They're not going to change the fact that, because I mean, you're talking about the Howey test here. I mean, it's like, this is using case law or established law inside the what happened to the how we've come up with a system to test it, and this new this financial innovation and technology bill that hopefully goes somewhere. I mean, probably not this year. And then the Democrats came out yelling at the Republicans for this bill, saying that they should be helping farmers and whatever, all kinds of other stuff. And it's like, this is where it starts getting the partisan stuff. Just pull it together and understand that the people who vote for you And the blue team or people that vote for the red team, we all own digital assets, and we're tired of this non-clarity and the supposed SEC looking out for us. If you had a better understanding of your constituents and people that actually vote for you, you'd realize that this is not a partisan issue, that there's independents, there's libertarians, there's conservatives, Republicans, Democrats, liberals. They all own digital assets. It's a universal thing. So stop with the back and forth nonsense. It's really getting old. It doesn't further it. And if you want to see what that looks like, is a lifelong Democrat got attacked in a hearing this week. RFK Jr. was destroyed by your representative, by the way, making all kinds of accusations of being anti-Semitic and everything. Debbie Blabbermouth Schultz, who disappeared for a few years after her massive corruption was swept under the carpet. Isn't that interesting, Jeff? But she went off on him, calling him every name in the book, accusing him of being anti-Semitic. You're talking about the son of Robert Kennedy Jr., Robert Kennedy was assassinated, and whose uncle, John F. Kennedy, was assassinated. You're talking about a dyed-in-the-wool blue team Democrat member being destroyed, and they're trying to Bernie bro him the same way they did with Bernie.
They're definitely trying to break, because they see him as he's a threat. They want to anoint. They don't like the legitimate means of of the election process. They don't want people to rise to power. They want to anoint who they want when they want them there, and they're not going to let anybody interfere with that. And we've seen that play out multiple times over. And it could very well be happening on both sides, but I think more so on that side, because we saw what happened to Bernie, and it shouldn't have happened to him based on, what was the trend. But we saw that, there was one person that was anointed, and they're doing it same thing to him. They don't want him to disrupt. And it's unfortunate to see, how these things are unfolding. But, you brought up something that's really, important, is that, as the blue team attacking on the attack to try to undermine this bill, making statements that the focus and attention should be someplace else. They should be worried about the farmers. If we can help provide clarity for cryptocurrencies, for digital asset, to pave the way for all people, like you'd mentioned, that can invest. But we're also talking about the streamlining of payments. We're talking about the easier movement of goods. So if a farmer wants to bring his crops to market and get paid immediately, that can happen. And you can also help small-time farmers not have to have the big expense of the banking infrastructure if they can do it through the digital asset space. And you're seeing that on a global scale. There's farms in Latin America, there's farms in Africa, there's farms all over, small micro farms that rely on brokers to move their product because they can't bank, and they're relying on cash payment. So they sell their crops for cash fiat because they can't access banking infrastructure. But if they can now access banking infrastructure through digital assets, they're going to streamline and they're going to advance. So now they sell their crops pennies on the dollar. But you know what? The teams over there that are saying this, they don't want those farmers to advance. They want those farmers to stay micro farmers and be reliant and subservient to the broker class. They don't want them to benefit and be self-sufficient. And so that's the difference.
Do you recall that when the previous president wanted to put tariffs on China, they said that, oh my God, this is going to collapse everything. The prices are going to go through the roof. Didn't change prices of anything. You'll be paying $3,000 for an iPhone, right? All this bizarre stuff. So the funny part about that is that the money that was collected from the tariffs from China was distributed to farmers, and who had a problem with it? The blue team, right? So this is all a bunch of bullcrap. It always is the suit the current narrative, and you start yelling about this thing over here. All these straw man arguments are absolutely insane and ridiculous, but you got to call it out when you need to. It's like there's just so much. We're at the point of where you could just say anything. Nobody cares whether it's real, whether it's fake, whether it's fact, whether it's fiction. Nobody. But people are smarter. They're not as buying as. And why do we know that? Because we see what's happened with the mainstream media. Their ratings continue to slide and slide and slide because nobody cares. It's like, yelling wolf. It's like nobody cares. After a while, you're like, okay, shut up over there. Nobody cares. We'll seek out our own information.
Look at this great statement here from Kermit the Frog. As long as devs migrate more and more to build on the ledger, knowing the work is legally safe, the better the outcome for XRP. Now, that's a great way to wrap the show.
Well said. And on that one, we are, Jeff, you want to say anything before we get out of here?
I want to say something to everybody out there that's still listening. You guys are the best and the brightest in all of YouTube crypto space because you're here with us. You guys are awesome. If you do want to support the show, you can go over to badassyetiscoffee.com and you can go check that out. You can go get some Badass Yetis coffee. You can go to xrp.cafe. Go check out the projects over there. Go check out the Badass Yetis. You can support that way. Or you can just show up here and like and subscribe and help us out right here on the show by showing up 3 days a week, Sunday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Wednesday, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Saturday morning at 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. 8 p.m., 8 p.m., 8 a.m. Can't forget that. 888. And here we are. Here we are.
Said. Well said. So on that note right there, guys, we'll see you guys tomorrow night. Chip and Jeff, we'll see you guys.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.